All right, today we're diving into something pretty big. It's Malaysia's 10-year plan to secure its entire food future, called the National Agro-Food Policy 2.0. So, what is it? And, probably more important, why should you care? Let's get into it. Seriously, just think about it for a second. The food on your plate, where does it actually come from? And how secure is that supply chain? These aren't just some random questions. They get right to the heart of national security and, of course, our daily lives.
Okay, so this isn't just some minor tweak to an old policy. No way. We're talking about a complete overhaul, a plan to make Malaysia's food system way more modern, sustainable, and tough. And it all kicks off by looking some pretty major challenges right in the eye.
So, why the need for such a huge plan in the first place? Well, the challenges facing Malaysia's food sector are complicated. They touch on everything from the national economy all the way to the environment. I mean, the numbers here really tell the story. Back in 2020 alone, Malaysia brought in almost 58 billion ringgit worth of food. At the same time, it only exported a little over 36 billion. So, you do the math, that's a trade deficit of more than 21 billion ringgit. That gap shows a really heavy, and you could say risky, dependence on other countries for our food. But that trade deficit, that's just one piece of the puzzle. There's a real struggle to get young people into farming, which means the workforce is getting older and we could lose a ton of know-how. Then you've got high production costs and a big dependency on foreign labor. On top of all that, throw in a tough business environment and the constant threat of climate change, and yeah, you've got a sector that is crying out for a transformation. But, big challenges can also spark big ideas. This policy isn't just about patching up a few holes here and there. Nope. It lays out a really ambitious vision for what Malaysia's food system could look like by 2030, and it's got some seriously bold targets to go along with it. Okay, before we get to the actual targets, we need to get on the same page about a key idea, the self-sufficiency level, or SSL. All it means really is the percentage of food a country needs that it can produce itself. So a higher SSL, that means better food security and less need to rely on imports. Simple as that.
And when you see the goals for SSL, wow, the ambition here is huge. For rice, the plan is to jump from 63% self-sufficient all the way up to 80%. And check this out. For vegetables, the leap is even crazier, from less than 45% to 79%. I mean, these are not small changes. This is a massive push to grow more of our own food right here at home.
And it's really important to get this. It's not just about self-sufficiency. It's also about money, about economic growth. The goal is for the entire agri-food sector to grow by an average of 5% every single year. If that happens, it would transform farming and food production from just being a necessity into a real powerhouse for the whole economy. So those are some amazing goals, right? But the big question is, how do we actually get there? Well, the policy lays out a really clear 5-point plan. They call them policy thrusts. The best way to think about them is like the main pillars holding up this whole 10-year transformation. Okay, so what are they? Well, first, it's all about modernizing farms with smart agriculture and new tech. Second, it's about making our markets stronger, both here at home and for exports. Third, we need to build up our talent, get people ready for these new jobs. Fourth is all about sustainability, making sure our food systems are resilient. And finally, the fifth pillar is creating a business environment that actually encourages all this to happen, attracting investment and new ideas. There's a quote from the policy itself that just perfectly captures the whole vibe of the plan. It talks about a sustainable, resilient, and technology-driven agri-food sector that prioritizes food security. You can see how it all ties together, right? Technology-driven, that's the modernization. Sustainable and resilient, that's the fourth pillar. And it's all for the main goal, food security. It's one big connected vision. All right, so high-level strategy is great, but let's make this a bit more real. How does a plan like this actually affect something we all depend on? Let's zoom in on a perfect example, the future of rice. So one of the biggest goals for rice is to close what's called the yield gap. What's that? Well, right now, the average paddy field produces about 3.5 metric tons per hectare. The target is to crank that all the way up to 5.3. That is a massive jump in efficiency. It means getting way more rice from the exact same amount of land. And it's all about using better tech and smarter farming methods. So, what does that actually mean in terms of total rice production?
Well, closing that yield gap would take us from producing about 1.5 million metric tons of rice to over 2.3 million. That huge increase is exactly how we get to that 80% self-sufficiency target we were talking about earlier. It all connects.
Okay, so how are they going to pull this off? The plan gets pretty specific. We're talking about restructuring financial support for farmers so they have more control. We're talking about promoting large-scale farming to be more efficient instead of having lots of small, separate plots. And, of course, getting a lot smarter about how we manage our water. It's all very practical.
All right, so we've looked at the problems, the big vision, and the 5-point plan. But let's just step back for a second and ask the most important question of all. Forget the numbers and the policy jargon for a minute. Why does any of this really matter to you?
Well, because this is about way more than just what's on your dinner plate. A secure food system that leads to a more stable economy. It means our farmers, who are the backbone of this whole thing, can actually earn a better living. And it means we produce our food in a way that doesn't wreck the environment for our kids and grandkids.
When you boil it all down, every single strategy and target in this policy is built on 4 goals that are all linked together: giving farmers a better income, guaranteeing our national food security, driving economic growth, and making sure it's all sustainable. And the main takeaway here is that you can't just pick one. You can't achieve one without the others. They all have to work hand in hand. So there you have it. Malaysia has laid out a really bold 10-year vision for its food. The roadmap is there, but the journey is really just getting started. It leaves us with a huge question, though. Will this ambitious mix of technology, sustainability, and policy actually be enough to build that secure and prosperous food future for everyone? I guess only time will tell.